Hi folks, we're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the concept of justice. Now, in the wake of and following the murder, and increasingly it's looking like a professional hit, the murder of Charlie Kirk and that gruesome murder of that Ukrainian young Ukrainian woman in the train. There's been a lot of hysterical calls for, why are we giving these people legal rights? They're animals. They're not even worth. Hey, legal rights. I mean, court presumption of innocence, court cases. Why are we bothering with that? Take them the fuck out back and shoot them or hang them. Or something. Wow. I mean, there are certain people in our society. So these hysterics claim certain people that just don't deserve any legal rights. I mean, why should they get legal rights? They're beyond the pale. They're not living within the rules. Why should the rules then benefit them? Just fucking arbitrarily kill them. That's what they deserve. Hey, whoa, let's just settle down a little bit here. I mean, that's anarchy. That. I mean, why don't you, in that case, shoot your next door neighbour because his dog, pisses on your lawn or something? Why don't you? Someone's playing music late at night, kill them. I mean, hey, someone cuts in front of you in the traffic, just get out a gun and shoot them. Hey, they've just caused you to be anxious and no, wait, stop. I even as a kid at school, when I was hearing stories about, say the Spanish Inquisition, where somebody could just say, well, Billy Bob down the road there, he didn't go to church on Sunday, and so what we're doing, or didn't say his prayers on this or that day, he's probably demonically possessed. Because the moment you would invoke a certain standard, such as demonic possession in this case, then the authorities had the right to act arbitrarily, because nothing could be worse than being in league with the devil. And that's what it was. If someone said that was, somebody informer said that, then suddenly your legal rights just evaporated, and whatever legal rights existed back in the day, then they evaporated, and the authorities could treat you as really a cohort of the devil, and thus you would automatically lie and cheat and deceive and engage in duplicity. So what you said couldn't be believed unless you gave a confession under torture. And then it could that so people say okay, I'm a fucking demon, just stop torturing. So as a kid, even I was sort of quite concerned about that. I don't know why, and I don't know what it gave me that perception of, well, that's not justice. That's not using even everyone having the same right just by invocation of this. You're a demon thing, suddenly your legal rights disappear. Same was in the medieval times of, alleged witches, which again, you were effectively a confederate of the demons, and at the time perceived that way, so that if your cow stopped giving milk or your hen didn't lay eggs that day, you say, well, it's because what's he down the road, there's a witch, or again, in league with the devil. So, again, your legal rights disappeared, because anyone who was that far outside of the what was considered to be acceptable behaviour, well, they didn't deserve legal rights. And this is something that's recurred throughout history, that one group of people is perceived to be so evil that legal rights aren't permitted for them anymore. And if you look at the pursuit of Donald Trump, for example, by the fanatics of the Biden, of the globalist cabal, with the Biden sort of people around. Biden, I don't think, knew what was going on day to day, but the people there were ruthlessly using the justice system to, quite unreasonably and absurdly, try and prosecute Trump to prevent him from running for public office. So the misuse and abuse of the justice system was certainly present, certainly obvious for all to see, I think. Now, the fact you don't like the guy you're going after doesn't mean that inventing evidence, perverting the course of justice, disallowing due legal process. That doesn't mean that that's correct in doing that, but there is a significant body of people, and certainly among those who would be considered, Democrat, pro-globalist, that anyone who disagrees with mass migration, or you disagree with some of the more extensive provisions for abortion, and or you disagree with gay marriage, that you, at that point, are so evil that you deserve to be murdered and killed. And the idea of due legal process and rules, forget about that. So this idea that there are people that are so bad they're not entitled to due legal process. Now, the due legal process of losing your liberty, that is being put in prison or executed in some cases, that is a serious matter. Now, due legal process is considered to be vitally important if some illegal alien in the United States has committed numerous crimes, is to be deported, then suddenly due legal process is an issue that gets raised. So, but we can see here that there's a very cherry picking type of thing. Well, that person has limited social power. The brown person who's there illegally has committed crimes, and therefore they are entitled to due legal process because of their supposed social power. Whereas, the straight white male, maybe a wealthy one, maybe a Christian, they do have social power, therefore they are not to be afforded the due legal process to the due to us. So we've now got a bifurcation where due legal process is apparently permitted only among the leftist view of the world, is permitted only for people with limited social power, but people with significant social, or presumed ideologically determined, of course, with significant social power, they can be just arbitrarily assassinated or killed or taken out back and shot and so on. So a quite remarkable situation, which is tearing our justice system to pieces in the West, by the way. I remember as a kid, I first saw the movie, I don't know, I was maybe 15 or something, and it was a rerun. It was a Clint Eastwood movie called Hang 'em High. And I don't know if, for those who haven't seen it, it's a guy goes to buy some cattle at some ranch, and he just blunders in at the time when some guy has come in and murdered the owners of the ranch, the rancher, and in blunders Clint Eastwood to buy the cattle. So that the murderer sells Clint Eastwood the cattle. Then a bunch of like a local posse's formed, and they come along and come after. They follow the trail of the cattle, and Clint Eastwood's there, and they say, well, we think you stole the cattle and you killed the rancher. Now, circumstantial evidence did suggest that, so it wasn't like they were just rando grabbing some dude, but they didn't bother to go through the facts and didn't bother to give due legal process to the Clint Eastwood character in the movie. I'm trying to remember his name. I think it was Jed Cooper, something like that. And so they strung him up on the spot. Turns out, some guy comes along who's like a sheriff or something like that, and he sees Clint Eastwood and cuts him down, and then he becomes he was a former sheriff, and the judge who's hearing the case, says, okay, we found the guy that did it. He's fessed, and he's, we'll hang him, and then offers Clint Eastwood the job of a federal marshal. And then Clint Eastwood goes around and he gets goes after all the people that hung him, arbitrarily. And I remember taking as a kid some satisfaction of that. I was quite upset about, well, okay, on the face of it, it looks like he stole the cattle and killed the ranch. Okay, I get that much. And he was a kid, I got that. But without confirming it to be so, you're just killing the guy. Now, this is, 1870s, rural United States or something. So, it's hardly there's one courtroom in 1,000 square miles, and so I get all that. But again, it disturbed me as a kid, this arbitrary killing of somebody, hanging in this case. So I think that's where we're at now. There's not enough people are concerned about due legal process, and I believe that the case of assuming the assassin is caught and brought to trial. I think there's a lot of people. If it is a professional hit, there's a lot of people won't want that guy caught and blabbing. So I think finding a dead body somewhere is probably more likely than catching him alive. But anyway, whatever happens, that should this person be taken out back and shot? Absolutely not. In my view, this person should be entitled to scrupulous due legal process, beyond scrupulous. And if found guilty, based on the facts, based on the again scrupulously tested, rigorously tested evidence, not the bullshit fucking kangaroo court trials they dragged Donald Trump through, but rigorously tested evidence, then and found guilty, then if whatever crime, whatever the punishments are, maybe it's 30, 40 years in prison or the death penalty, whatever it might be, then that it be seen to be, again, scrupulously administered all the way through. Same goes for the guy who, it's caught on camera. So I don't know if there's a whole lot of, the difference between the prima facie and the fact is probably going to be not that much. But again, that guy is entitled to a trial and one where he's accorded due legal process. But once we get into this path of due legal process, that means everyone is entitled to due legal process. And that one is one of the great, I think, hallmarks of the Western system of justice and law, that there was no 2-tier or 3-tier, or this person's got social power, that one doesn't, or this person is, speaks in a cause that we, the corrupt judge, agree with. No. Everyone's entitled to the same due legal process. And the scrupulous application of the law has to begin in selection of the judges. You don't knowingly select radical activists, which is the case today. And if you look at during the last 4 years of the Biden administration, the amount, like 3 out of every 4 judges was a rabid, not just a little bit, but a rabid activist. Rabid activist judges being pointed all over the place because this is good for social justice, restorative justice, social power, and all this sort of stuff. Very ideological. Whereas the issue of the facts, the evidence, and so on is really all that matters. Sure, there are other factors you can consider. Maybe the person is a lunatic, and in which case they need to be in a prison for the criminally insane. But nonetheless, the issue is that everyone gets the same justice, and the idea of ideological justice, that is social power issues and restorative justice and so on, has no place, and it can never ever function in a one all are equal before the law. It can never function in that way. Thus, the corruption and perversion in selection of activist judges, and then having ideological law applied, which now applies. You look at the majority of cases, say in Australia, the majority of court cases are now cases rape. So the very front line of gender power politics is now being dragged into the courts, and so that feminist activists, prosecutors, and so on can act out their insane fantasies at the taxpayer's expense, and using the power of the state to go and randomly intimidate and oppress men who've maybe gone on a date, the date that didn't quite work out very well, and it's now being used as weaponized as a ideological device to play in the front line of gender power politics. We've allowed this to happen, and it's all over the Western world now. And there are so many activist judges that the only repairing that can be done is to bring out a rigorous law that says if you're an activist, or you have any activist associations with the case or the people in it or the issues to be considered, then you can't hear that case. That's the only way we can now restore balance to the justice system, given how. But it used to be that judges would recuse themselves if they had some sort of conflict of interest. But the opposite is the case now, where these activist judges are gagging to hear the case so they can add, their ideological spin onto what otherwise would have been facts and evidence. You've been with Tassos today, your Pushback channel.